The Great Council Chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive structure built by species far older than humanity. Inside, thousands of aliens sat in curved rows that stretched up toward the domed ceiling. Some had scales, others had fur, and many had bodies that humans could barely understand. But they all had one thing in common today. They were all watching Ambassador Lisa Grant stand at the speaker's podium, and most of them were trying not to laugh. Lisa stood straight, her gray suit pressed and perfect, her dark hair pulled back in a simple style. She had been Earth's representative to the Galactic Council for 3 years now. She had learned to ignore the whispers and the looks. Humans were new here, barely 15 years since first contact. They were the young species, the primitives with their chemical rockets and metal bullets. "The Kelthera need our help," Lisa said, her voice steady. "They face extinction. The Vrexian Empire has given them 1 week to surrender their world or be destroyed." A rippling sound filled the chamber. It took Lisa a moment to realize it was laughter. The Zelthian ambassador, a being that looked like a floating jellyfish made of light, spoke through its translator. "Ambassador Grant, your concern is touching. But what exactly can humanity offer? The Vrexians have 200 warships. Their shields can withstand plasma fire. Their weapons can crack a planet's crust." Lisa felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her expression calm. "We can offer protection. We can send ships to defend Kelthera Prime." Now the laughter was louder. Even some of the usually polite species joined in. The Veroxian ambassador, a massive creature with 6 arms and crystal-like skin, leaned forward. "Human ships have no energy shields. Your weapons still use, what do you call them, bullets? How many ships could you even spare for such a mission?" 30 ships, Lisa said. "Our defense fleet can be ready in 2 days." The chamber erupted in noise. Some aliens were laughing so hard their translator devices struggled to keep up. Others made sounds that Lisa's earpiece couldn't even translate. The council speaker, an ancient being called a Tormath who looked like a walking tree, raised 3 of its branch-like arms for silence. "This is most unusual," the Tormath said, its voice deep and slow like rocks grinding together. "Ambassador Grant, your species' willingness to help is noted. However, we must be clear. The Vrexian Empire is one of the most powerful military forces in this sector. They have conquered 47 worlds. Their war fleet has never been defeated. Your 30 ships against their 200 would be enough to buy time," Lisa interrupted, which made several aliens gasp. Interrupting the council speaker was considered extremely rude. Enough time for the council to organize a real defense. Enough time to evacuate the Kelthera if needed. Enough time to matter. The Vrexian ambassador made a sound like grinding metal. "The council will not risk war with the Vrexian Empire over one insignificant species. The Kelthera chose not to develop weapons. They chose to remain defenseless. That is their failure, not ours." Lisa felt anger rise in her chest, hot and fierce. She had visited Kelthera Prime once 2 years ago. She had walked through their crystal forests and met their people. The Kelthera were telepathic, peaceful, and kind. They had welcomed humanity with open minds and generous hearts. They had no concept of violence because they could feel each other's pain. To hurt another was to hurt themselves. "So we just let them die?" Lisa asked, looking around the chamber. "We sit here in our safe station and watch as an entire species is wiped out because they chose peace over weapons?" The Zelthian ambassador's light flickered. "We must think of the greater good. A war with the Vrexians would cost millions of lives across dozens of worlds. One species versus many. The mathematics is simple." Lisa gripped the podium's edge. "Then humanity will go alone. We volunteer to defend Kelthera Prime. We ask nothing from the council except that you remember we tried." The Tormath's branches rustled, which Lisa had learned meant surprise. "You understand that this will likely result in the destruction of your fleet? That you may lose all 30 ships and everyone on them?" "We understand," Lisa said quietly. "And your government has approved this action?" Lisa thought about the emergency session she had just finished with Earth's Security Council. The vote had been close. Many had argued that humanity couldn't afford to lose 30 ships, that it wasn't Earth's fight. But in the end, the vote had passed. Because that was what humans did. They showed up for people who couldn't fight back. "They have," Lisa confirmed. The Tormath was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke to the full chamber. "The council accepts humanity's offer. Let the record show that Earth volunteered to defend Kelthera Prime against the Vrexian Empire. May your gods watch over you, Ambassador Grant. You will need their blessing." Lisa nodded and walked back to her seat. She could feel thousands of eyes on her back. She could hear the whispers. Some called her brave. Most called her foolish. Some, she knew, were already planning humanity's funeral. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the horizon, watching his crew prepare for departure. His ship was a diplomatic vessel, not a warship, but they were going anyway. Someone needed to coordinate the defense, and Jake had volunteered before anyone else could. "Status report," Jake said, settling into his command chair. Ben Carter looked up from the engineering station. He had been Jake's best friend since flight school, 15 years ago. They had explored the solar system together, then been part of humanity's first trip beyond it. Now they were heading into a battle they would probably lose. "Engines are good," Ben said. "Reactor is running at 98%. All systems green. We can leave whenever you're ready." Jake nodded and looked at the tactical station. Nicole Hayes was reviewing star charts, her fingers moving quickly across the holographic display. She had been a military officer before joining the diplomatic corps. Jake trusted her tactical mind more than anyone's. "Nicole, how long to Kelthera Prime?" "At maximum speed, 4 days," Nicole replied without looking up. "The defense fleet left yesterday. They'll arrive one day before us. Commander Phillips is already organizing the defensive positions." Jake knew Ryan Phillips. They had served together on the Mars defense grid before the first contact. Ryan was smart, tough, and creative. If anyone could make 30 ships stand against 200, it was him. "What do we know about the Vrexian fleet?" Jake asked. Nicole pulled up a new display. Images of massive dark ships appeared, all angles and sharp edges like weapons themselves. The Vrexians use primarily plasma-based weapons. Their ships have multi-layered energy shields that can regenerate quickly. Their hulls are reinforced with some kind of crystal alloy we don't fully understand. They fight in tight formations and rely on overwhelming firepower. "And our advantages?" Jake asked. Ben laughed, but there was no humor in it. "We're smaller and faster. We can turn quicker. And we're too stupid to run away." Nicole finally looked up and Jake saw worry in her eyes. "Jake, we need to be realistic. Our railguns might punch through their shields if we can get close enough. The Vrexians designed their shields to stop energy weapons, not solid projectiles. But getting close means surviving their long-range plasma cannons. Most military analysts give us less than a 10% chance of holding for more than 6 hours. Then we make those 6 hours count," Jake said firmly. "Send a message to Ambassador Grant. Tell her we're launching now. And send one to the Kelthera too. Tell them Earth keeps its promises." The horizon pulled away from the station an hour later. Behind them, the council chamber continued its session, but most of the ambassadors were distracted. They kept checking their data pads, watching for news from Kelthera Prime. Some were already composing humanity's obituary. On Earth, Lisa's message had been broadcast worldwide. People gathered in the streets watching the feeds from the departing fleet. 30 ships didn't look like much against the stars. Families of the crew members held each other and tried to be brave. In military academies across Earth, instructors used the fleet's deployment as a teaching moment. What would you do with 30 ships against 200? How do you defend when you're outgunned and outmatched? The answers varied, but they all agreed on one thing. Someone was probably going to die. The horizon jumped to faster-than-light travel, and the stars stretched into lines of light. In the crew quarters, men and women checked their equipment, wrote letters home, and tried not to think about the odds. Some prayed. Others just sat quietly with their friends. Jake stood in his ready room looking at a picture of Earth on his wall. It was taken from the moon, the famous image that showed their whole blue world hanging in the dark. Somewhere down there, his sister was probably worried sick. His parents would be watching the news constantly. He wished he could tell them not to worry, but that would be a lie. There was a knock on his door. "Come in," Jake called. Ben entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Jake and sat down. "Couldn't sleep either?" "Too much to think about," Jake admitted. "Ben, do you think we're doing the right thing?" Ben sipped his coffee and considered the question seriously. "I think we're doing the only thing we can do and still be able to look at ourselves in the mirror. The Kelthera never hurt anyone. They don't deserve to die, just..." Kelthera Prime hung in space like a jewel, its surface covered in blue oceans and continents that sparkled with what looked like glass. Commander Ryan Phillips stood on the bridge of the Defender, his flagship, and studied the beautiful world they had come to protect. 29 other human ships floated in formation around him. It didn't feel like enough. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the surface," said Megan Walsh from the communications station. She was young, only 24, but she had already proven herself invaluable. She could speak 5 alien languages and had a gift for understanding how different species communicated. "Put it through," Ryan ordered. The view screen filled with the image of a Calthera. They were humanoid but taller, with skin that seemed to shift between silver and blue. They had large eyes without pupils, just swirls of color like oil on water. Most striking was that they seemed to glow faintly as if lit from within. "Commander Phillips," the Calthera said, and Ryan felt something strange. The words came through his translator, but there was also a feeling behind them. Gratitude, deep and sincere, but also confusion. "I am Elder Shen. On behalf of all Calthera, we thank you for coming. But we must ask why. We have nothing to offer you. No weapons, no ships, no trade that would justify such risk." Ryan had thought about this question during the 4-day journey. "Because you need help and we can give it." That's reason enough. The feeling coming from Elder Shen shifted to something like wonder mixed with sorrow. "We have been part of the galactic community for 300 years. No one has ever offered to protect us before. Most species find our telepathy uncomfortable. They think we read their minds without permission." "Do you?" Ryan asked, genuinely curious. "Not intentionally. We sense emotions, not thoughts. But we cannot turn it off. Right now, I feel your determination, your fear for your people, your hope that you will succeed, and underneath it all, your doubt that 30 ships will be enough." Ryan felt oddly exposed but not violated. "You're right about all of that. But we're still here." "I know," Elder Shen said softly. "That is what makes your species so remarkable. You feel the fear and come anyway. May I send someone to meet with you? We wish to understand our guardians better." "Of course," Ryan said. "We'd be honored." 2 hours later, a small Calthera shuttle docked with the Defender. Dr. Sophie Walker was waiting in the docking bay, practically bouncing with excitement. She was Earth's leading xenobiologist and had begged to be included in the mission. Ryan had agreed because understanding the Calthera might give them some tactical advantage. The Calthera who emerged from the shuttle was younger than Elder Shen, her skin brighter silver. She carried nothing but wore a simple robe that seemed to be made of woven light. "I am Lyra," she said, and Sophie felt a wave of curiosity and warmth. "You must be Dr. Walker. Elder Shen said you study other species." "Yes," Sophie said, trying not to stare. "I've read everything about the Calthera, but meeting you in person is incredible. Can you really sense emotions?" "Always," Lyra said. "Right now you feel excited and fascinated, but also worried. You care about your crew members very much," Sophie blinked. "That's amazing. And a little scary, honestly. Not being able to hide what I feel. Most species find it disturbing," Lyra agreed. "That is why we developed no weapons. When you feel everyone's pain, you cannot bring yourself to cause it. Violence is impossible for us." Sophie led Lyra through the ship's corridors. Crew members stopped to stare at the glowing alien walking among them. Some nodded respectfully. Others just looked confused. "Your ship is very different from others I have seen," Lyra observed. "Everything is metal and functional. No elegance or beauty. We build for purpose, not art," Sophie explained. "These ships were designed to take damage and keep fighting. They're not pretty, but they're tough." They reached the conference room where Ryan and his senior officers were waiting. Lieutenant Kevin Torres, the fighter wing commander, stood up immediately. He was tall and muscular, with the confidence of someone who had never met a challenge he didn't want to face head-on. "Ma'am," Kevin said with a slight bow. "It's an honor." Lyra tilted her head. "You are not afraid, why?" "Everyone else on this ship carries fear inside them, but you feel only excitement," Kevin grinned. "I've always wanted to fly against the best. The Vrexians are supposed to be the best. Now I get to find out if that's true." Ryan cleared his throat. "Kevin loves a challenge. Sometimes too much. Please sit down, Lyra. We need to discuss the defense plan." Lyra sat and Ryan pulled up a holographic display of the planet and the surrounding space. Red dots represented projected Vrexian approach vectors. Green dots showed where human ships were positioned. "The Vrexians will arrive in 4 days," Ryan explained. "Based on their previous attacks, they'll come in from multiple vectors to prevent escape. They'll try to establish orbital superiority first, then begin planetary bombardment. Our job is to stop them." "How?" Lyra asked simply. Ryan hesitated. "Honestly, we're still figuring that out. Our ships are faster and more maneuverable than theirs. Our weapons can potentially penetrate their shields if we get close enough, but they outnumber us almost 7-1 and their firepower is superior. Then you will lose, Lyra said softly, and you will die protecting people you barely know. This does not make sense to us. Ben Carter spoke up from where he leaned against the wall. He had transferred to the Defender to help with tactical planning. It doesn't have to make sense. It's just what we do. But why? Lyra pressed. We have studied many species. The Vruxians believe in profit above all else. The Zelthians value logic and efficiency. The Tormeth preserve tradition and order. What do humans value so much that they would sacrifice themselves? Sophie answered before Ryan could. We value the idea that stronger people should protect weaker ones. That having power means having responsibility. Maybe it's stupid. Maybe it'll get us all killed. But it's who we are. Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Through their emotional connection, she could feel the truth of those words. Every human in the room believed them. They weren't trying to gain anything or prove anything. They simply believed that the strong should shield the weak. I will tell Elder Shen, Lyra finally said. He will want all Kelthera to know what kind of species has come to defend us. We have been part of the galactic community for so long, but we have never met anyone like you. Over the next 3 days, the human fleet prepared. Kevin Torres ran his pilots through constant drills, practicing attack runs and evasive maneuvers. The plan was simple because it had to be. They would engage the Vruxian fleet as far from the planet as possible, forcing the enemy to fight through them before reaching Kelthera Prime. Lieutenant Hannah Price worked with her Marine units, preparing for the possibility of boarding actions. Hannah was shorter than most Marines, but twice as tough. She had grown up in a military family and joined the service the day she turned 18. Now she was training her people for close-quarters combat against aliens. Remember, Hannah told her assembled Marines, Vruxians are bigger and stronger than us. They have forearms and natural armor plating, but they're used to fighting from a distance. They think melee combat is primitive. That's our advantage. Get close. Get inside their reach and don't give them room to use those extra arms. One of her Marines, a young man named Tyler Ross, raised his hand. Ma'am? What if their ships don't let us get close enough to board? Then we make them let us, Hannah said grimly. We do whatever it takes. In the Defender's engine room, Ben worked with Matt Donovan to modify their weapons. Matt was the fleet's senior weapons specialist, a quiet man who had spent 20 years making things explode. Together they were trying to give their railguns more penetrating power. The problem is energy, Matt explained, showing Ben a diagram. Our railguns use magnetic acceleration to fire solid projectiles. They're designed to work in a vacuum where there's no air resistance. But the Vruxian shields are multi-layered energy fields. Our projectiles have to punch through several layers before hitting the hull. Can we increase the muzzle velocity? Ben asked. Not without burning out the rails after a few shots, but I had another idea. Matt pulled up a new schematic. What if we coat the projectiles in something that disrupts energy fields? We have some materials in storage that might work. It's experimental, but we don't have much to lose. Do it, Ben said. Even if it only works a few times, it might make the difference. On the bridge, Ryan reviewed reports from all 30 ships. Every captain reported ready status. Every crew had accepted the mission. They knew the odds. They came anyway. Nicole approached him with a data pad. I've been analyzing Vruxian tactics from every battle we have records for. They have a pattern. They always start with long-range bombardment to soften the enemy. Then they move in with their main battle fleet. They don't expect resistance at close range because most species can't survive their initial barrage. So if we survive the opening moves, we might surprise them, Ryan said. Maybe, but Ryan, surviving that first barrage means taking hits that would cripple most ships. We have no shields. We'll be relying on our armor and damage control teams. People are going to die. Ryan looked at her steadily. I know. Make sure every ship captain. The Vruxian fleet appeared like a wound in space. One moment there was nothing but stars, and the next moment 200 massive warships hung in the darkness, their hulls black as night and covered in weapon ports. Each ship was 3 times the size of the largest human vessel. They looked like they had been built specifically to terrify enemies. On the bridge of the Defender, alarms started blaring immediately. Ryan stood from his command chair, his heart pounding. All ships, battle stations. This is it. Across the fleet, 30 human ships powered up their weapons and aligned into defensive formation. They looked tiny compared to the Vrexian armada, like children's toys facing real weapons, but every captain reported ready. Every crew member was at their post. "Incoming transmission," Megan said, her voice tight. "It's from the Vrexian flagship." "Put it through," Ryan ordered. The view screen showed a Vrexian for the first time. They were massive creatures, easily 9 feet tall, with 4 powerful arms and bodies covered in thick, dark scales. Their faces were reptilian, with eyes like burning coals. This one wore armor that seemed to be made of the same material as their ships, all sharp angles and intimidating design. "I am War Master Drakthul," the Vrexian said, his voice deep and harsh. "You are the human fleet, the species that volunteered to defend this worthless world?" "We are," Ryan said calmly. "I'm Commander Ryan Phillips. Turn your fleet around, War Master. Kelthera Prime is under Earth's protection." Drakthul made a sound that might have been laughter. "I have 200 warships. You have 30. Your ships have no shields. Your weapons are primitive. This is not protection. This is suicide. Then you should leave before you find out which," Ryan said. The Vrexian leaned forward, and Ryan could see genuine curiosity in those burning eyes. "Why are you here, human?" "The Kelthera offer nothing of value. They have no resources you need, no territory you want. They cannot even defend themselves." "Why die for them?" "Because they need defending," Ryan said simply. "Because someone should stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. Because it's the right thing to do." Drakthul was silent for a moment. "You are fools, but brave fools. I will give you one chance. Turn your ships around and leave. I promise safe passage. You will live and you will learn an important lesson about the galaxy. Power decides everything. Weakness deserves extinction." Ryan felt anger rise in his chest. Strength should protect weakness, not destroy it. "We're not leaving. Then you will die," Drakthul said flatly. "I will honor your courage by making it quick." Drakthul out. The screen went dark. Ryan turned to his crew. "All ships execute attack pattern Alpha. Get us in close." "Nicole, are our modified projectiles ready?" "Loaded and ready," Nicole confirmed. "Every ship has them in their primary railguns." "Good. Kevin, get your fighters in the air. I want them harassing the Vrexian formation, making it hard for them to target us." Kevin's voice came through the comm. "Copy that, Commander. Fighter wing launching now." Through the view screen, Ryan watched as dozens of small fighters streamed from the human ships. They were fragile things compared to the massive Vrexian vessels, but they were fast and agile. Kevin led them in a wide arc, heading toward the enemy fleet. The Vrexian ships began to move into attack formation. They spread out in a practiced pattern, their weapons powering up. Red targeting beams swept across space, locking onto the human ships. "Here it comes," Nicole said quietly. The Vrexian fleet opened fire. The space between the two fleets lit up with plasma bolts, streaks of superheated matter that could melt through ship hulls like butter. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands, filling the darkness with deadly light. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Ryan ordered. "Don't stop moving. Get closer." The human fleet scattered, each ship weaving and dodging, but there were too many plasma bolts. Ryan watched in horror as 3 human ships took direct hits. The bolts smashed into their hulls and metal exploded. One ship, the Liberty, simply vanished in a ball of fire. The other 2 lost power and began drifting, their engines destroyed. "Liberty is gone," Megan reported, her voice breaking. "Franklin and Constitution are critically damaged." No response to hails, Ryan gritted his teeth. 3 ships down in the first minute. At this rate, they would all be dead in 10 minutes. All remaining ships full speed ahead. Get into close range, now. The human ships accelerated, burning their engines at maximum power. More plasma bolts hit them. The Defender took a glancing blow that shook the entire ship. Alarms blared as sections depressurized, but they kept moving forward. "Distance to enemy fleet?" Ryan demanded. 2,000 kilometers and closing, Nicole said. "Vrexian ships are adjusting formation. They don't understand why we're moving toward them instead of retreating." "Good. Let's keep them confused. All ships, fire railguns on my mark." The human fleet crossed into optimal firing range. They were close now, close enough to see the details on the Vrexian ships, close enough that the enemy's massive plasma cannons couldn't depress low enough to target them effectively. "Fire!" Ryan shouted. Every human ship fired at once. Railguns unleashed solid metal projectiles at incredible speeds. But these weren't normal projectiles. Thanks to Matt's modifications, they were coated in material that disrupted energy fields. The projectiles hit the Rexian shields and something amazing happened. Instead of bouncing off or being deflected, they punched straight through. The shields flickered and failed at the impact points, and the projectiles slammed into hull armor. Explosions rippled across multiple Rexian ships. Direct hits, Nicole said, amazement in her voice. Shields are down on at least 20 enemy vessels. We actually hurt them. Ryan allowed himself a moment of hope. Keep firing. Focus on the ships with damaged shields. Kevin, take your fighters and hit those weak points. Kevin's fighter wing dove toward the damaged Rexian ships, firing missiles and gun runs. The small craft were too fast for the massive enemy vessels to target effectively. They weaved between the giants, attacking like insects stinging a bear, but the Rexians adapted quickly. Smaller weapons ports opened across their hulls, specialized anti-fighter turrets. They began tracking the human fighters with laser point defense. Ryan watched as 3 fighters simply vanished, cut apart by precision beam fire. Kevin, pull back, Ryan ordered. You're taking too many losses. Negative, Commander, Kevin replied, his voice strained. We're keeping them distracted. If we pull back, they'll focus on the capital ships. We can take it. Another fighter exploded. Then another. Ryan felt helpless. Kevin, we knew the job when we signed up, Kevin said. All fighters, follow me. We're going after their flagship. Ryan wanted to order him to retreat, but Kevin was right. The fighters were buying precious time for the larger ships to close distance and do more damage. It was a tactical decision. It was also going to get Kevin and many of his pilots killed. The Defender took another hit, this time more direct. The ship shuddered violently. Sparks flew from control panels. Megan grabbed her console to keep from falling. Hull breach on Deck 5, someone reported. Emergency bulkheads engaging. We've lost the port maneuvering thruster. Route power from secondary systems, Ryan ordered. Keep us moving. Ben's voice came through from engineering. Ryan, the reactor is running at 110%. We can't sustain this for long, maybe 30 minutes before we start having system failures. Then we make these 30 minutes count, Ryan said. How many Rexian ships have we destroyed? Nicole checked her sensors. Confirmed kills 7. Another 15 are heavily damaged. But Ryan, we're down to 23 ships. We've lost a quarter of our fleet in 15 minutes. The math was brutal. They were killing Rexians, but not fast enough. At this rate, the human fleet would be destroyed before they could significantly damage the enemy force. Hannah's voice cut in from the Marine Bay. Commander, I have a crazy idea. Some of those damaged Rexian ships have compromised hulls. Their shields are down. We could board them. Ryan's first instinct was to say no. Boarding actions were insane under the best circumstances. In the middle of a massive space battle, they were suicidal. But then again, this whole mission was suicidal. Explain, Ryan said. We use breaching pods to hit those damaged ships. My Marines go inside and cause chaos. Plant explosives, sabotage systems. Force them to deal with us instead of shooting at our fleet. Even if we can't take the ships, we can cripple them from the inside. You'll be trapped on enemy vessels with no backup, Ryan said. I know, Hannah said simply. But it'll work. Let us do our job, Commander. Ryan closed his eyes for just a moment. He was sending people to die. But they were all here to die if necessary. The question was whether those deaths would matter. Do it, Ryan said. Take 3 ships worth of Marines. Hit the most damaged Rexian vessels you can reach. Good luck, Lieutenant. Sir, yes, sir, Hannah said. 5 minutes later, breaching pods launched from 3 human ships. They were crude devices. Basically armored cylinders with rockets and drills on the front. They couldn't be steered well, but they were fast and hard to shoot down. Ryan watched as the pods streaked toward damaged Rexian ships. Point defense fire cut down 2 of them, but the rest made it through. They slammed into enemy hulls and drilled through, depositing Marines directly inside the Rexian vessels. Hannah, report, Ryan called. Inside the Rexian heavy cruiser, Hannah Price ran through smoke-filled corridors, her Marines following close behind. The ship's interior was massive, built for creatures twice their size. Everything was dark metal and sharp edges. Warning lights flashed red, and alarms howled in a frequency that hurt human ears. Turner, plant charges on that support beam, Hannah ordered, pointing to a massive structural element. Davis, watch our backs. These things could come from anywhere. Her team had been inside the Rexian ship for 10 minutes. They had killed 7 Rexian crew members in brutal close-quarters fighting. The aliens were bigger and stronger, but they fought like they expected their opponents to be afraid. Hannah's Marines weren't afraid. They were angry. A Vrexian warrior rounded the corner, all forearms holding weapons. Davis fired first, his rifle bucking on full auto. The bullets sparked off the alien's armor, but enough got through. The Vrexian stumbled and fell, its weapons clattering on the metal floor. Keep moving, Hannah urged. According to their scans, the reactor should be one level down. If they could sabotage it, this ship would be out of the fight. Maybe permanently. They found an access shaft and started climbing down. Hannah went first, her weapon ready. The shaft opened into a massive chamber filled with glowing crystalline structures. The reactor, she realized. It was beautiful in a terrifying way, pulsing with energy that made her teeth ache. Plant charges on those support columns, Hannah ordered. We have 5 minutes before this place is crawling with security. Her team spread out, attaching explosive charges to critical points. Hannah covered them, her eyes scanning for enemies. She could hear footsteps echoing through the chamber, getting closer. A lot of footsteps, how much longer? She called. 2 minutes, Turner replied, working fast. The footsteps got louder. Hannah saw movement in the shadows at the chamber's entrance. Lots of movement. Contact! Multiple hostiles incoming! Vrexian warriors poured into the chamber, at least 20 of them. They opened fire with plasma weapons, and the air filled with superheated bolts. Hannah dove behind a reactor column as plasma melted the floor where she had been standing. Charges set, Turner shouted. We need to go. But the way they came in was blocked. Hannah looked around frantically and saw another shaft on the far side of the chamber. That way. Move, move, move. Her team ran through plasma fire. Davis took a hit and went down screaming. 2 other Marines grabbed him and dragged him along. Hannah laid down covering fire, emptying her magazine into the advancing Vrexians. They reached the shaft and started climbing. Behind them, the Vrexians were closing in. Hannah pulled a detonator from her belt. Everyone clear? Clear! Her Marines shouted from above. Hannah pressed the button and jumped into the shaft. The explosion started small but grew quickly. The reactor's containment failed and a wave of energy rushed through the chamber. Hannah felt incredible heat at her back as she climbed faster than she ever had before. They emerged on an upper deck and ran for the breaching pod. Behind them, the ship shuddered and groaned. Secondary explosions rippled through the vessel. Hannah's team made it to the pod, sealed the hatch, and launched. As they pulled away, Hannah watched through the small viewport as the Vrexian cruiser she had just left broke apart. A massive explosion tore through its center, and the ship separated into 3 pieces. Success, Hannah thought. But Davis was dead. So was Turner. 2 more dead out of her team of 8. This is Price, she called over the radio. We're clear. Target destroyed, returning to the Defender. But when she tried to navigate toward the Defender, she couldn't find it. There was too much debris, too much chaos. The space around Calthera Prime had become a junkyard of destroyed ships, both human and Vrexian. On Calthera Prime's surface, Lyra stood with Elder Shen and thousands of other Calthera. They had gathered in the crystal forests, looking up at the sky where flashes of light marked the battle. Through their telepathic connection, they could feel everything happening above them. The fear and courage of the humans, the rage and confusion of the Vrexians, the pain of those who died. They are suffering so much, Lyra whispered, tears streaming down her face. Every Calthera was crying. They felt every death, every wound, every moment of terror. It was almost unbearable. Why do they continue? Another Calthera asked. They could retreat. They could save themselves. Because they promised to protect us, Elder Shen said quietly. And humans keep their promises even when it costs them everything. Sophie Walker felt it too. She had stayed on the Defender to continue her research, but now she was trapped in a crippled ship, floating in the middle of a battle. She had set up a telepathic link with Lyra days ago, an experiment to see if humans could connect with Calthera minds. Now through that link, she felt everything Lyra felt, the collective emotion of an entire species. Their gratitude, their guilt, their desperate hope. Sophie, can you hear me? It was Lyra's voice, but not through a radio. Through their minds, I can hear you. Sophie thought back. We want to help. We can feel every human up there suffering and dying for us. There must be something we can do. Sophie thought frantically. The Calthera had no weapons, no ships, no military technology. But they had their telepathy. Lyra, can you share feelings with someone who isn't Calthera? Yes, with permission. I have been doing it with you. Could you do it with everyone? Every human in the fleet at the same time? There was a pause. We have never tried. It would require the focus of every Calthera on the planet. The connection would be intense, overwhelming perhaps. Why? Because our people are dying, Sophie said. Because they're exhausted and scared and running out of hope. If they could feel what I feel through you, if they could feel the gratitude of an entire species, the hope of billions of Kelthera, maybe it would give them the strength to continue. We will do it, Elder Shen said, joining the telepathic conversation. All Kelthera will join this link. Tell your people to open their minds. Sophie broadcast on all human frequencies. This is Dr. Walker. The Kelthera want to share something with you. Don't be afraid. Just open your thoughts and feel. Across the fleet, exhausted humans looked at each other in confusion. But they trusted Sophie. On the remaining ships, on damaged vessels, in fighter cockpits and marine pods, humans opened their minds. The connection hit like a wave. Suddenly, every human fighting above Kelthera Prime felt it. The collective consciousness of billions of telepaths all focused on one message. Gratitude. Pure, overwhelming gratitude. Not just words, but feeling it as deeply as the Kelthera did. Understanding that every human sacrifice mattered, that every moment they fought gave hope to an entire species. Ryan, drifting in the crippled Defender, felt it and gasped. It was like being wrapped in warmth. He felt seen, understood, valued. More than that, he felt the Kelthera themselves, their gentleness, their love for all living things, their absolute commitment to peace. He understood why they were worth protecting. Kevin, in his damaged fighter, felt it and laughed with joy even as his engines sputtered. He had been considering a final kamikaze run into the Vrexian flagship. Now he knew he had to survive. He had to tell people about this, about what the Kelthera were. Hannah, in her breaching pod, felt it and cried. She thought of Davis and Turner and all the others who had died. But through the Kelthera's gratitude, she felt their deaths had meaning. They hadn't died for nothing. Laura Mitchell, the medical officer, felt it while treating wounded in the Defender's medical bay. She had been losing people all day, watching them die despite her best efforts. The Kelthera's gratitude didn't make the deaths easier, but it made them meaningful. The connection gave the humans something they desperately needed. Purpose. Renewed determination. The absolute certainty that this fight mattered. All remaining ships, Ryan broadcast, his voice stronger than it had been in an hour. Regroup on my position. We're not done yet. 20 human ships answered. 20 out of 30 original vessels. But those 20 came together, forming a defensive sphere. They might be damaged, they might be outgunned, but they were still fighting. But the Vrexians had adapted too. War Master Drakthul was furious. These humans had destroyed 17 of his ships. 17. No one destroyed Vrexian vessels. No one made the mighty Vrexian Empire look weak. Enough. Drakthul growled to his bridge crew. We will ignore the human fleet. All ships target Kelthera Prime directly. Burn the planet. If we cannot defeat these humans in space, we will complete our mission and destroy what they came to protect. The Vrexian fleet began to reposition, turning their massive guns toward the planet below. Their objective had never really been to destroy the human fleet. It had been to conquer or destroy Kelthera Prime. The humans were just in the way. Commander, the Vrexians are turning toward the planet, Nicole reported, alarm in her voice. They're charging their main bombardment weapons. Ryan felt ice in his stomach. The human fleet was too damaged, too scattered to intercept. If the Vrexians started bombarding the planet, they could kill billions of Kelthera in hours. All this sacrifice would be for nothing. On the horizon, which had just arrived in the system after its slower journey, Jake Morrison saw what was happening. His ship wasn't a warship, but it was intact. It had engines and a reactor, and Jake hadn't. The explosion faded, leaving silence in its wake. For a moment, nothing happened. The Vrexian fleet drifted, leaderless and confused. Their flagship was gone. War Master Drakthul was dead. Nearly a quarter of their force had been destroyed or crippled by a fleet that should have been crushed in minutes. The remaining human ships held their positions, battered and barely functional. 13 vessels were still capable of fighting, though most had lost main weapons or engines. 7 more drifted in space, too damaged to maneuver but with crew still alive inside. Ryan floated in the zero gravity of the Defender's bridge. The ship had lost power to most systems. Emergency lighting cast everything in dim red. Through the shattered view screen, he could see debris from hundreds of ships, human and Vrexian, glittering in the light of Kelthera Prime's sun. Are they retreating? Megan asked weakly. She had bandaged her head wound but was still bleeding from other injuries. Nicole checked her console, which flickered with dying power. I think so. The Vrexian fleet is pulling back. They're reforming but moving away from the planet. Ryan couldn't quite believe it. We did it. We actually held them. At what cost? Someone whispered. The cost had been terrible. 17 human ships destroyed completely. Thousands dead, including Jake Morrison and everyone who had stayed on the horizon. Every surviving ship was damaged. Every crew had lost friends. The defense of Kelthera Prime had been bought with blood and sacrifice, but the planet below was safe. The Kelthera lived. 3 days later, the Galactic Council arrived. They came in their massive observation vessels, ships designed to witness history but never participate in it. They had watched the entire battle from a safe distance. Now they came to see what remained. Ambassador Lisa Grant stood in the council chamber once again. But this time no one was laughing. The vast room was completely silent as she walked to the speaker's podium. Every alien representative stared at her with expressions she couldn't quite read. Respect? Fear? Shame? The human defense fleet held Kelthera Prime, Lisa said simply. The Vrexian Empire has withdrawn. The Kelthera are safe. The Tormath speaker's branches rustled. We witnessed the battle, Ambassador Grant. We saw what your species accomplished. 17 ships destroyed. Over 4,000 humans killed. Another 8,000 wounded. For a species you barely knew. We did what was right, Lisa said. You did what was impossible, the Zelthian ambassador said, its light pulsing with emotion. The Vrexian Empire has conquered worlds for 200 years. Their fleet has never been defeated, never. You had 30 ships against 200. You had no shields, inferior weapons, and no military advantage. Yet you won. We didn't win alone, Lisa corrected. The Kelthera gave us strength through their telepathic connection. Our crews fought with courage and determination, and we had commanders who understood that creativity and sacrifice can overcome technology. The Vrexian ambassador, the crystal-skinned being who had mocked humanity just days before, stood up. Ambassador Grant, the Vrexian Trade Federation wishes to formally apologize. We have resources and technology that could have helped. We chose profit over principle. We were wrong. Other ambassadors began to speak, each expressing similar sentiments. They had been wrong to dismiss humanity. Wrong to assume technology determined strength. Wrong to let fear of the Vrexians prevent them from doing what was right. Lisa listened to them all. Then she spoke, and her voice carried clearly through the chamber. You want to know what we learned up there? We learned that being defenseless doesn't mean being weak. The Kelthera have no weapons, but they have something more valuable. They have compassion, telepathy, and the ability to feel each other's pain. That's not weakness. That's strength we don't even understand yet. She paused, looking around the chamber. But we also learned something about all of you. You have weapons we don't have. You have shields we can't build. You have ships that make ours look like toys. But when it mattered, when lives were at stake, you did nothing. You watched. You calculated. You chose safety over righteousness. The chamber remained silent. Some aliens looked ashamed. Others angry. But all of them listened. Humanity isn't special because we're stronger, Lisa continued. We're not. We're special because when we see someone who can't defend themselves, we stand in front of them. We don't ask what we'll gain. We don't calculate the odds. We just do what's right, even if it costs us everything. Elder Shen appeared on a view screen transmitting from Kelthera Prime. The Kelthera wish to speak, he said. The Tormath nodded. The council recognizes the Kelthera. Elder Shen's image grew larger. Behind him, thousands of Kelthera stood in their crystal forests. For 300 years, we have been part of the galactic community. We were told that civilization meant progress, technology, and advancement. But we were also told that our pacifism made us weak, that our inability to fight meant we didn't deserve to survive in a dangerous galaxy. He paused, and Lisa felt emotion through their telepathic link, gratitude, deep and sincere. Then humans came, a species you all considered primitive, a species with old technology and limited resources. But they had something none of you showed us. They had courage. They had principles. They had the willingness to sacrifice for strangers. Elder Shen looked directly at Lisa. The Kelthera have decided to form a permanent alliance with Earth. We will share our telepathic gifts with willing humans. We will exchange knowledge and culture. And we will remember, for all time, that when we needed help, only one species answered the call. The council chamber erupted in discussion. An alliance between the Kelthera and humanity could shift the balance of power in this sector. The Kelthera had resources and knowledge that other species wanted. Now those resources would be available to Earth first. But more than that, it was a statement. The defenseless species had chosen their guardians. On Kelthera Prime, Sophie Walker stood in a crystal forest with Lyra and hundreds of Kelthera. The telepathic link between their species had become permanent for those who wanted it. Sophie could feel the collective consciousness of the Kelthera nearby, a gentle presence in her mind. "What will you do now?" Lyra asked. "Help rebuild," Sophie said. "Study, learn, share knowledge. Earth wants to send scientists and teachers. The Kelthera want to send telepaths and philosophers. We have so much to learn from each other." "And we will," Lyra said. "But we will also remember. Every year on this day the Kelthera will observe Thalsera, the day of those who stand. We will remember every human who died protecting us. Their names will be recorded in crystal, where they will last forever." Sophie felt tears on her cheeks. Through the telepathic link, she felt what every Kelthera felt. They would never forget. The sacrifice would be honored for generations. In orbit, the human survivors were being evacuated to medical ships that Earth had sent. Ryan Phillips floated in the medical bay of a transport vessel, his leg in a cast and his ribs bandaged. Around him, other wounded crew members recovered. Kevin Torres lay in the next bed, his arm in a sling and burn scars on his face. He had survived by ejecting from his fighter at the last second, drifting in a spacesuit until rescue crews found him. "We did good, didn't we?" Kevin asked. "We did what we came to do," Ryan said. "We protected them." "At what cost, though?" 17 ships, 4,000 people. Jake, Nicole, Ben, so many others. Ryan was quiet for a moment. They knew the cost before they came. They came anyway. That's what makes them heroes. Kevin nodded slowly. Yeah, I guess it does." Hannah Price visited Ryan later that day. She walked with a limp, her own injuries still healing. "The Marine Corps is recommending everyone from the boarding actions for commendations. Davis and Turner will get medals posthumously. They deserve them," Ryan said. "You all do." Hannah sat down carefully. "Do you think it was worth it, Commander? All those lives for one species?" Ryan looked at her seriously. "The Kelthera are billions of sentient beings, Hannah. They think, they feel, they love, they dream. Their lives matter just as much as ours. If we don't stand up for people who can't defend themselves, what kind of species are we?" "The kind that survives," Hannah said quietly. "That's what the Vrexians would say." "Yeah, and the Vrexians ran. We won. Maybe survival isn't the highest virtue. Maybe sometimes you have to risk everything for what's right." 2 weeks later, Lisa Grant stood at a memorial service on Earth. Behind her, a massive wall displayed the names and faces of everyone who had died defending Kelthera Prime. 4,217 humans. Each one a volunteer, each one a hero. Families of the fallen sat in the front rows. Some cried, others sat in silent dignity. All of them wore the small crystal pendants the Kelthera had sent, each one containing a telepathic recording of their loved one's final thoughts. It was a gift beyond measure, a way to feel their courage one last time. Lisa read names for 2 hours. Jake Morrison, Nicole Hayes, Ben Carter, Davis, Turner. She read them all, and with each name she felt the weight of what they had sacrificed. When she finished, she spoke to the assembled crowd. These people didn't die because they were ordered to. They died because they chose to. They chose to stand between the innocent and those who would harm them. They chose to be guardians even though it cost them everything. She paused, looking at the faces before her. The Galactic Council has